I'm Nabil.
I'm Karim.
And we're Nabil and Karim.
Yeah, it's a revolution. Yeah.
So can you share with us, what is it that you do?
I'm an alternative healer. I play the guitar. I love singing. I make music. I produce music. And I'm also now a YouTuber.
I'm a teacher, father, husband, and also I make music on the side.
They make some killer beats too.
And I'm very excited to be here today with Nabil for Baha'iblog.net.
How did Nabil and Karim start?
Yeah, well, we actually used to make music after school in college at Metalworks Institute here in Ontario. Well, actually Mississauga. And the interesting thing about that is that it was my uncle that introduced us, because I was here visiting and I wanted to study music. And he said, well, I know a guy that's doing music. His name's Nabil. So he set up that meet and greet. And so that's essentially how we met and how I ended up going to that school where Nabil was. And we, like I said, made a lot of music together after school.
What is the inspiration behind your music?
For me, the main source of inspiration is the Baha'i Writings. So it's really that simple. The writings and the Word of God is so beautiful, so healing, so medicinal in a way, so soothing, that in a way for me it was quite natural to attempt to put it to music.
Yeah, as an artist, you have an opportunity to express your experience in life and put that out there into the world for people who consume or experience your art to kind of feel that experience that you had. And so for me, one of my biggest life experiences, I guess you could say, is reading and interacting with the writings of Baha'u'llah, the Baha'i teachings and the Baha'i writings. So it's very natural then for me to want to, and even when I don't necessarily set out to do it, for it to naturally happen in my form of art, my expression, for that to come through. And even when it's not an explicitly Baha'i song, those who know the writings of Baha'u'llah well will see the correlations in a lot of what I create personally, because I just can't help it. That's part of who I am. It's in my consciousness, you know.
Why was it important to you personally to create Nabil and Karim?
Well, for me, it was basically a need. Growing up, I listened to a lot of Baha'i-inspired music. As I mentioned earlier, the writings, in a way, nourishes the heart, the mind, the soul. Kind of got used to that. Was a little bit disappointed in a lot of the mainstream music, which I loved listening to, like pop, hip-hop music. I loved the production. I loved the melodies and all that kind of stuff. But what was lacking was, you know, the lyrics were quite opposite of everything that my heart was attracted to. So very impure, very corrupt, very speaking to the base desires of man, and in a way activating those carnal, you know, base desires in teenagers and all that kind of stuff. So for me, I just wanted to see hip-hop production and pop being used with the Word of God. And that was really it for me.
So, for me personally, what really got me going, got me involved, and got me doing the Nabil and Karim stuff is that at that point in my life, I was very inspired by the Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program and what the animators and junior youth were doing together. I felt really, I still do now, it's this exciting movement that age group is not being serviced very well. You know, they're forgotten. It's almost like the forgotten age, you know. And so to have a program where they're really excited about all the things that are in that program, I was just so inspired. And so for me, the Nabil and Karim was to create music for them as an alternative to what's on the radio, you know, because I felt exactly the same way Nabil did, all that stuff he just said. And prior to that, when I was in Alberta, I was part of a group called Dialectica with my brother and his friends. And we had that same kind of unified vision and goal of, putting the Baha'i writings into music as best we could, or Baha'u'llah's teachings into music. So kind of always been inspired by that. But at that moment, when I came to Stratford and Nabil had a studio here, that's where my mind was really around the junior youth program and all that stuff.
What would you say you both have in common?
What do we have in common? Not much. We're very different.
We are. And I think that's...
I'm thin. You're fat. I eat healthily, okay? And he's always eating deep fried,
foods,
sugar,
coffee
gluten.
3 times a day.
It's kind of unfortunate that we don't see eye to eye on the food. But I've been working with him for about 15 years now to try and get him
Change my ways.
change his ways. So.
Why do you think you work so well together?
One of the reasons why we do work well together, we make a good team, is because we're actually quite different in many ways. Not only musically, because he was so deep into rap and I was so deep into, not afraid to admit it, into pop music, Britney Spears, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys back in the day. And that's what I was listening to. I had no exposure to rap music until I met Karim. So, and then he does the beatbox, he's more into the beat production, and I'm more into the melodies and such. So that's one of the reasons why we make a really good team, is because we complement each other, kind of like a, husband and wife, maybe. Is that okay? Julie, are you cool with that?
I was also into Backstreet Boys, and I still am.
Thanks for not making me feel alone in my shame.
There is no shame in
There
that.
is no shame.
They have amazing songs. Max Martin, though, is the guy who wrote most of those songs.
Have you learned any new skills while working with each other?
A lot of times we have challenges along the way when it comes to different projects, when it comes to dealing with people. And Karim being the younger one, I'm always, in a way, surprised as to how well he deals with things. So patient, so understanding, seeing this musical journey as really a journey, a learning experience. And a lot of times I'm afraid to break things to him. Like I would be afraid to break things to him when things wouldn't go well, I guess. And I was the one saying, let's do this, let's give it a shot, let's trust this person or that organization or this committee. And then sometimes when it didn't go as planned, so chill, such a chill guy. And that would inspire me, that would teach me, amazing.
So what I learned from Nabil, one of the main things that I've learned is attention to detail and striving for excellence in art. I'm more of the finisher, like when it comes to art. I will express myself, get it out there in the world. Even if I know there's some things that I could improve about that thing, that little piece of art, there could even be 15 things that I know I could do better or change or just spend a little more time with. But I'm very comfortable putting it out there in the world and then just learning from that experience and moving forward. But what I've really learned from Nabil is that sometimes you should take the time to let it simmer, come back to it, make a change, invest the time, and really create the most excellent thing that you can, and then put it out there in the world. And I think that's another way we balance each other out.
Really what it boils down to is being a perfectionist. Because of low self-esteem, you want it to be as best as possible. So
That was too real. That was way too real.
they can't handle that.
No one can handle that.
Why are the arts and music so important?
Well, here's the thing. Music and the arts open the heart. So I can sit here and talk to you on an intellectual level as long as the sun is shining or the moon is glowing or whatever. And it could, help us come closer together. It could also help us drift further and further apart. But through music and through art, we can speak to each other on a deeper level, faster, depending on the art and the expression. And so for me, that's one thing that really excites me. And I've had many experiences, and I know we've had many experiences together, where people have shared with us the effect that the music has had on them. And sometimes it's overwhelming. We weren't expecting that. Maybe we thought, oh, that'll be fun. Yeah, let's take this and throw it on a track and let's see what happens. And then someone will say, that song changed my life. Or I was straying away from the message of Baha'u'llah. I listened to your one song and I've reinvested myself in this faith. That's pretty heavy. So that's clearly not us doing that. That's this thing called art. I personally think there's a cloud of creativity up there, and we need to learn how to become hollow channels and tap into that cloud. And then, we just refine our tool over the years, and then just let that kind of flow out into the world. And then you kind of get to sit back and see what happens and go, wow, interesting. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, art has always been at the forefront of changing civilization and pushing civilization forward, revealing the corruption. I mean, that's what rap does. That's what the blues used to do, is sharing the pain, sharing the corruption. That's what painters do. Artists are really at the forefront of this change. And when this art is, in a way, infused with divine revelation, the most powerful force in pushing humanity forward is divine revelation. Divine revelation is the motive power and has been of a human civilization throughout all ages. All the divine religions have been initially the source of good, the source of advancement, the source of inspiration of the arts, the wonders of the world, the architecture, etc. So I think there's nothing more important than art that is inspired by the Holy Spirit.
What do you think happens when music and the Baha'i faith intersect?
So when the Baha'i faith, when the writings of the Baha'i faith and music meet, when they intersect, something really magical happens. And I'd like to share a quote from Baha'u'llah regarding this topic. He says, "Intone, O my servant, the verses of God that have been received by thee, as intoned by them who have drawn nigh unto him, that the sweetness of thy melody may kindle thine own soul and attract the hearts of all men. Whoso reciteth in the privacy of his chamber the verses revealed by God, the scattering angels of the Almighty shall scatter abroad the fragrance of the words uttered by his mouth, and shall cause the heart of every righteous man to throb. Though he may, at first, remain unaware of its effect, yet the virtue of the grace vouchsafed unto him must needs sooner or later exercise its influence upon his soul. Thus have the mysteries of the revelation of God been decreed by virtue of the will of him who is the source of power and wisdom."
So I actually have a little bit of a story about the thing that Nabil was just talking about. And that is, one time we were in Nabil's studio. He was laying down a really cool guitar riff. I went in and tried to add some drums. We were building the basics of a track. Then we sat back and we said, wow, that's cool. Let's think of some melodies and some lyrics. And what ended up happening subconsciously is we started writing lyrics similar to that of what we've heard most of, which is pop love songs. So the lyrics coming out were like, hey baby, I love you, girl, I miss you, whatever, stuff like that. And then we had a moment where we said, wait a minute, what are we doing? And so we pulled out a prayer book right there on the spot, and the first prayer we turned to was a prayer for the youth. We read that prayer together. I think we read a couple other prayers. We were immediately inspired to infuse that song with lyrics matching that theme of the power of youth based on this Baha'i prayer. And so the lyrics that came out were, this is my air, this is my prayer, This is what I breathe in. This is what I believe. I want to guide the wayward, lead the hapless, awaken the heedless, and free the captives, right? And so if you know that prayer, you'll know that's like a direct reference and distraction. Extraction. I thought you said distraction. That's a direct distraction from the writings. No, so that was a really interesting moment because we could have gone this way, and we totally went the other way with the prayer book there and the writings. And that song ended up resonating quite a bit with the youth. And it was interesting to watch that happen, that process, because I think that sometimes it can be a struggle to kind of read these words and gather inspiration from them. But when they're put to a melody or put to a rhythm, it seems to be much easier to connect with that source, with those words, especially for the youth, I think. So that was a very interesting experience for us.
What advice would you give to aspiring artists?
I have a few thoughts. One would be that you don't have to be a full-time artist. I think a lot of people, they have so much talent, whether it's musical or, the hand arts, painting, crafts, and all that kind of stuff. And they think that they have to be able to do it full-time in order to be, worthy of doing it to any extent. And my advice would be that shouldn't be the case. We shouldn't dichotomize our own lives, our artistic life and our professional life. We should create, always and whenever we need to. It's a very healthy thing to do, to express oneself. And that's what art really is. It's one of the most, beautiful ways of expressing oneself, speaking your mind, your truth in whatever platform you choose to do. And the world needs it. The world needs more art that inspires and changes. So that's one of the things. And the other thing I would say is, relating back to what we talked about, we mentioned earlier, is that art is one of the most powerful things that can connect with the youth, the junior youth, and with all people to affect a change, a cascade in human consciousness, essentially.
I do have a few thoughts. I actually have many thoughts, but a few of them now are, it's important to know what you're getting into and why you're getting into it. So what I mean by that is, if you want to pursue music, let's say, it would be very easy for you to subconsciously be pursuing fame and money. And to me, it's an important distinction to be made. It's not to say that one is like better than the other and you should judge yourself or be guilty about the other. If you want to become rich and famous, okay, that's your thing. But do that and make that your thing and figure out how to do that. If you want to pursue music, then do that. Don't allow yourself to be so confused. That's my one point of advice. And I say that because I've experienced that on my own personal journey. I have many moments of confusion where I don't know what I'm really trying to do. Am I trying to become well-known and make a lot of money at this thing? Or am I just trying to make music that I think is cool? Am I just trying to express myself and get it out there and share it with the world? Those are very different things. And one idea I can share, if you are pursuing the art form itself, is to create a noble goal for yourself, because that can be confusing. Well, then, I think we're goal-oriented beings. Well, I can't speak for the entire human race, but for me, I'm goal-oriented. So what would be a goal if I'm just pursuing music and I'm not actually pursuing fame and money? What kind of goal could I have to help me work every day? And so one idea is something called a noble goal, something that will help civilization advance. How can you figure that out through your art form to help people grow, to help the world become a better place by doing something? It should be almost unattainable, a big vision, basically. That's something you can work towards every day. And what the interesting thing about this noble goal is that all that stuff over here that could be your goal will actually become the byproduct of working towards that goal. So we have some experience with that. So we just set out to express ourselves and make music and do the best we could. And one byproduct of us coming together to do that was becoming quite well known. Many people know us and know our music as Nabil and Karim. It's a very interesting thing. We didn't actually pursue ever. I don't know if we put in much effort at all into getting as many people to hear our music and doing stuff. We haven't done that. We've just made some music, shared it a little bit, and it kind of spread, which was really interesting and a blessing and a bounty. And that's the byproduct of that kind of noble goal that we were each individually and communally have been working towards. That's one piece of advice.
Another piece of advice I'd share is, especially for artists who are starting out, is to be as prolific as possible. What that means is just keep creating as much as possible, and don't worry about the art not being up to par with your standards or the standards of the media, essentially. Because one of the things is what you hear on the radio is a byproduct, as a result of a team of 20, 30, 40 professionals and a lot of money. And a lot of young artists starting up on their computer or laptop with their beat, singing, whatnot. You have to remember you're alone. It's just you. And so whatever you've created, that's a huge achievement, and you should congratulate yourself, essentially. So when we were starting out, that's one of the issues I had, was sharing. We had created, I think, 2 or 3 songs, our first 2, 3 songs, and because I was afraid, I was a perfectionist, I had the same issues, which I'm talking about right now. We had a friend, Gordon Naylor, who told me, if you're not in motion, you cannot be guided. You have to let go of that music in order to be able to create more art and thereby be perfected. So it's really the journey that perfects the art. We can't expect to have perfect art in the beginning. And so, as Karim was saying, if we get into the art for the likes, for the validation, early on you're going to get dismotivated and you're going to quit. So one of the secrets, is to be prolific. Create. Don't share it. Don't share it for the validation. Again, a lot of people get into it for the validation, therefore they quit. So if we're doing it with the noble goal behind it, for us, really, for me, creating art is an act of worship. Everybody is supposed to worship God and glorify His name. We have been created in His image. Thou hast created me to know Thee and to worship Thee. So creating art really should emanate from that pure place within us of worshiping our Lord, regardless of what people think of the art and what quality, what level it's at, because God doesn't mind. I don't think He really places emphasis on the quality or how well you sing or how well the song has been produced or the painting has been painted. He looks at the human heart. He sees with what motive, what purity of motive we have created that art. In many cases, an art which would be, by societal standards, deemed as unworthy would be accepted and would attain to the good pleasure of our Maker, whereas other art, a lot of the art we hear on the radio, which is worshipped by the human race, would not enter into the heaven of His approval.
Can you share your thoughts on serving the faith?
Yeah, regarding service, I guess one thought I would share is that there's such a huge movement, such huge consciousness when it comes to self-improvement, self-development, life coaching, yoga, etc., etc. Everybody's into that. They're wanting to perfect themselves. There's a huge movement regarding the self-love movement. You should love yourself. You have to learn how to love yourself before you can be able to love others properly. And I would say that service to others, to humanity, is the fastest way we can achieve self-development and self-love. And I speak of this from my own experience. I'm going to share a quote from Shoghi Effendi. He beautifully describes this. He says, "The more we search for ourselves, the less likely we are to find ourselves. And the more we search for God and to serve our fellow men, the more profoundly will we become acquainted with ourselves, the more inwardly assured. This is one of the great spiritual laws of life. And I think this is brilliant because this whole self-love movement is really focused, I think, a little too much on the self. You have to learn how to love yourself. You have to treat yourself. You have to pamper yourself, etc., etc. Anybody who doesn't treat you properly, boom, out of my life, you know? You have very zero tolerance, is protective of the self, is inwardly focused. But what do we see here? We see that the key to healing yourself, to finding yourself, to loving yourself is in service to others. Because essentially, the highest station for man, for human beings, is that of servitude.
Yeah, so when it comes to advice on how to serve the faith, I do feel ill-equipped to answer that question because I'm still trying to figure out how best to serve the faith. However, I do have one simple point, which is you never know what to expect. So be prepared to have your boat rocked. If you're truly trying to be of service to the faith and you take a step in that direction, you're totally going to be rocked, you know, and you'll learn a lot from that.
Serve as much as you can because it accelerates
totes.
your growth and the growth of society more than anything else.
What is something about the Baha'i Faith that you recently have been personally deepening on?
Something that I've really been discovering lately in relation to the writings of the faith and the Baha'i Faith is this interesting concept that our heart belongs to God. To me, that's kind of a new concept. I think I've heard about it many times, but for some reason at this point in my life, I'm discovering more and more about it. So I'm involved with a Ruhi Book 8 and a Ruhi Book 6 right now. And in both of them are these writings that reference this concept that our hearts don't actually belong to us. Our hearts are actually the city of God, and we need to learn how to unlock the gate to that heart.
So what am I learning about the faith right now? It also pertains to the human heart, but to the purity of the human heart. I'm reading the Revelation of Baha'u'llah volumes by Adib Taherzad, a brilliant compilation or volumes. I highly recommend it to everybody. And what we see in these books is really the journey of purifying the heart of every single one of the believers until, of course, they finally meet their highest destiny, which at that time was that of martyrdom, the crown of martyrdom. And then we see it all over in the writings. I'm reminded about it. We're reminded about it in the hidden words, in the writings, in the prayers. Baha'u'llah always reminding us about the purity of the human heart and how the human heart has been destined for him, for his knowledge, for his mysteries, and that how the friend and the foe cannot abide in one heart. The desires of this world are incompatible, essentially, with the love of God. In essence, they are signs that we are not in love with God, truly in love with God. And one of the things that this book does is, the history of the faith does, is it ignites the flame of the fire of the love of God in our hearts. And for me, that's a learning, because through that I learned that love, the love of our Maker, is the most powerful way and the easiest way and the fastest way to eliminate all of these desires, because it so fills the heart of the individual that one has no more cravings for material, the things of this material world, for the evanescent things, the finite things of this world, be it fame, money, lust, etc., food, gluttony, and whatnot. So, and also the importance of the purity of the human heart. I'm going to share a quote here, and it's quite scary. It's pretty inspiring because we learn, at least the way I've interpreted it, we learn that the journey of life, or the secret of life, is quite simple. It's attaining or maintaining a pure heart, and that's it. That's really it. But on the other hand, it's quite scary, because if we don't achieve it, because when I looked at myself, when I was reading these quotes and reading the history of the faith, I'm always assessing myself, essentially. How does that apply to me? And, I see these desires within myself, things that pertain to this world, some stronger than others. So we're so lucky to have this guidance and this blueprint, essentially, on how to navigate this life, to be able to partake of God's endless bounties and blessings in His eternal worlds. So the quote is, let me just pull it up right here. Adib Taherzadeh says, in a tablet, he affirms, he Baha'u'llah, that should the eyes of an observer be as large as the universe and turn for one moment to someone other than him, such a person is not worthy to enter his presence. We can appreciate this statement of Baha'u'llah if we ponder the case of a man who seeks illumination from a candle when the sun is shining at its zenith. And this reminds me of another quote where Baha'u'llah says, say, he is not to be numbered with the people of Baha who followeth his mundane desires, or fixeth his heart on things of the earth. He is my true follower who, if he come to a valley of pure gold, will pass straight through it aloof as a cloud, and will neither turn back nor pause. Such a man is assuredly of me. From his garment the concourse on high can inhale the fragrance of sanctity. And if he met the fairest and most comely of women, he would not feel his heart seduced by the least shadow of desire for her beauty. Such a one indeed is the creation of spotless chastity. So, and then this also reminds me about the ablutions that we do before our obligatory prayer, where we say, as we're washing our face, we say, I have turned my face unto thee, O my God, or O my Lord. Illumine it with the light of thy countenance. Protect it then from turning to anyone but thee. And so now I understand what this ablution is really talking about. Remember from the previous quote, should our eyes be as large as such and such, but turn to anyone but him, but for a moment, we're not worthy of his love, essentially.
We've put that concept into 2 songs. Really? I will share them now. Unlock the city of my heart, break free from the pain that's tearing me apart. One more chance to be who I am. Take me back to the flame where it all began. Anyways, go.
Yo, we want to do it with the guitar.
Yeah. Unlock the city of my heart, break free from the pain that's tearing me apart. One more chance to be who I am. Take me back to the flame where it all began. Open up my eyes and let the light shine. Open up my mind, this is the right time. Anyways, it goes on and on.
Anyways, that was a nice little snippet.
When you think about the dispensation of the Bab, what themes come to mind?
When thinking about the dispensation of the Bab and all the heroic acts that took place, for me, a few themes that come to mind are somewhat obvious but important to me and very powerful. One of those is courage. Another one of those is sacrifice. Another one of those is determination to see your journey through to its end. Another one of those is commitment to that who you love or that which you love. And in these stories, you see this again and again and again and again in many different ways. For me, these stories were what solidified me in my faith when I was about 16. And I wrote a rap about it, some of these stories. And I'm so excited that we had a chance to recreate that track. So anyways, that's just a little side note.
In a time when a lot of people have lost hope, what keeps you hopeful?
In a world of hopelessness, you are exactly right. It's hard to find hope. For me, the main one thing, without hesitation, absolutely, since the time I was a young little guy, has been Nabil. He has given me hope with his style,
man.
with his
right.
approach to
My
speaking,
beard, don't forget.
and his facial hair
Facial hair.
have given me hope. Okay, can I do it again? You're exactly right. It's very hard to find hope. What I have done and had the bounty and the blessing of being able to have near me is the writings of Baha'u'llah. And for me, that is unequivocally and without hesitation the one source of hope that is always with me and always close to me. When I'm reading those writings and trying to apply them into my life and be of service to my community and the world, I'm filled with hope. I have so much hope in me that I'm sharing it with others as I walk around. If I'm not doing that, it's very hard for me to find hope.
For me, what gives me hope is really the love of Baha'u'llah, because love is the opposite of fear. And so that gives us courage to speak our truth, to be involved in creating a new world. And when you're involved in creating a new world with 7+ million other Baha'is and the friends of the faith and other people who are building a better world, you're not just focused on the corruption in the world and things just getting worse, which would make one depressed and suicidal and anxious and hopeless. So that's what really brings me hope. It really comes back to the love of Baha'u'llah, his healing message, and his revelation.
Yeah, it's a revolution. Yeah.